Again.
Da-da-da-da-da.
They're all stacked on top of each other, so there's not a lot of randomness to this.
Alright, let's see. As a former foster kid, having a hero like Billy Batson exists means the world to me. How does it feel to be a part of a superhero project that has a special relationship of foster care at its core?
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a very good one.
Well, I think think that's part of the uniqueness of the movie too. Actually, I can't think of, just off the top of my head, I can't think of other foster kids who became superheroes within the comic books. There have been orphans, there have been kids with a lot of family problems, that's for sure. But I can't think of anyone in the foster care program.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing.
And I wish we knew who this was. Thank you for that really deep and awesome question. I think anytime you're able to represent a group of people that is underrepresented, I think that's always a really beautiful thing. And I'm pretty excited that we get to, we're gonna hug it out. We're gonna hug it out, guys. That's really special. I like that.
That's special.
All right, next question.
It's been about 4 months since I saw David F. Sandberg's Shazam, and it was quite a special occasion. My local theatre was doing a preview screening of it on my birthday of all days, about a week before the worldwide release, and I can honestly say I don't think I've been affected by a comic book movie this way since Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. I'm a big lover of comics, as you all know, but for the past few years, I've kind of just been enjoying them like any other audience member. Very few have reached me to that level of childlike awe and wonder until this. I thought of several different ways to do this video. Do I compare it to the 1980s coming-of-age movie it was clearly influenced by? Do I attempt to convince you that Billy Batson is some kind of messiah? Or do I do this? Today, I want to talk about the power a movie like this can have, why it affected me, and why I want more superhero movies to follow this kind of pattern. Together, we'll go on that personal journey and examine what we can learn as writers from David F. Sandberg's Shazam! I'll start this story out by saying that I wasn't watching this like every other viewer. There's a reason that I asked Zachary Levi and Asher Angel that question. And it's because I've never seen a movie that captures the foster care experience as well as this. Growing up, I gravitated to a lot of characters who never knew their real parents. Whilst other kids were into Batman because he was viewed as the coolest superhero, I gravitated towards characters like Peter Parker, Harry Potter, Tracy Beaker, and Clark Kent. There was always a comfort in knowing that I wasn't alone in this sense, and to be clear, my adopted parents are great. I just always never felt a lot like the kids around me because that blood relation was missing. So it was good to see characters like that in fiction who, despite going through these scenarios, come out as heroes at the end. When a Shazam movie was announced, I had no real idea about who the character was. At that time, I figured it'd be no different than any other comic book movie, albeit maybe brighter and more colourful. But to prepare for it, I watched Penny Marshall's Big, which the movie takes a great influence from. And when the first trailer hit at Comic-Con in 2018, it was safe to say this was my most anticipated movie of 2019. And so far, it's still my favourite movie of 2019. The movie opens with a familiar scenario and a motif of what will become the central theme for the story. We see a family driving during the Christmas break, all whilst Bing Crosby's Do You Hear What I Hear play in the background. But as a nice counterbalance to the happy, joyful time of Christmas, this is a dysfunctional family. I suppose we can't really expect less from one that includes Smallville's Lionel Luthor as the father, but the entire introduction scene could easily be the setup for a hero as much as it ends up being one for the eventual villain. A young version of Dr. Savannah is constantly teased and mocked by his father and brother, and then gets the chance to have the honour of becoming the Wizard's champion. It's a scenario all too familiar in these style of movies. A lonely kid who's bullied gets the chance to prove himself, but this is a modern day comic book movie, and this is a villain. So things don't obviously go that way, as he's tempted by the 7 deadly sins and thus cast out by the wizard Shazam. The sympathetic part comes in where this momentarily relapse causes his father to crash the car and eventually become paralyzed when they are hit by a truck. And we know immediately from this reaction, Savannah will grow up being blamed for this and set on the eventual dark path he takes. This is the moment that defines him for the rest of his life. And it's interesting to compare this with how we first meet Billy Batson, even in the 2 introductory scenes. When we meet Savannah, the lighting is haunting and almost gothic-esque, with the Christmas song taking on a chilling context in the scene that it's a part of, and having Savannah be dressed almost like a mini-adult, whereas In the next scene, we meet Billy Batson, where the scene is brightly lit with an upbeat, cheerful song introducing us to our protagonist, who's dressed in a much more warm and inviting Christmas color style costume. Of the two, Billy is the only one here actually doing something wrong, but the great thing is, both of these scenes have the two central characters within them doing what they do in order to seek approval from someone who, in the end, never really cared about them in the first place. I also have to give credit to David F. Sandberg's way of framing shots to look like comic book imagery, from using real sets to incredible lighting and ingenious framing, like this shot that foreshadows Savannah's eventual villainous look. Without taking any credit away from him, his style reminds me a lot of Sam Raimi, in which a lot of the lighthearted fun and silliness of the movie is balanced out with darker horror elements. These add real personal stakes to the overall movie, and it's refreshing to see a superhero movie like this that's main focus is its heart and childlike wonder over ramming in a bunch of references that we don't need. There are 3 central characters in Shazam, all of which have fleshed out arcs and great payoffs. These are Billy Batson, Dr. Savannah, and Freddie Freeman. A thing done commonly in creating character arcs is to ask yourself, what is the lie that your character believes, and how do they feel about that after going on their journey? The lie that Billy believes is that family is purely blood-related, and spends so much of the movie ignoring the loving foster family out of fear that accepting it will force him to face the truth that his birth mother abandoned him. When he becomes the hero Shazam, Billy believes he's invincible and thus lets his guard down and becomes fun, confident, and cheerful. But it's interesting that this power shows off the true nature of who Billy really is, which is something a lot of kids do when they feel no one's watching them. By the end of the movie, Billy's embraced his new family and lets himself become the hero both as Shazam and as Billy Batson. The lie that Savannah believes is that pure good people don't exist, and the only way to succeed in life is through obtaining power, built out of a viewpoint constructed by his abusive childhood, and the line from the wizard which told him he would never be good enough, which is very similar to how it feels as a foster child, constantly doubting whether your birth parents gave you up for your own good or because they thought you weren't good enough. This ends with Savannah essentially choosing a different type of abusive family in the 7 Deadly Sins, who use him as a vessel and betray him as soon as they get the chance. Freddy is an interesting case because the lie he believes is more true than Billy or Savannah. When we're introduced to Freddy, he's constantly needy and spewing out ridiculous comments to stand out, but we learn that this is all part of a defense mechanism in order for people to stop overlooking him because of his disability. Freddy's quite happy with the foster family, as seen during this scene in which they are both asked how many rooms they want for a house they want to buy. Freddy's answer tells me he is happy with the family and has no intention of abandoning them, because they are likely the only ones who give him any kind of love and affection despite his disabilities.
Why don't you just start with how many bedrooms you're looking for?
1.
7? 1?
7? What, am I running a foster home now?
So, this makes his end when he becomes a superhero all the more of a wish fulfillment scenario for these characters. Having the movie's final act center all around Billy accepting his family to the level that he shares his power with them so they can all take down the bad guy together is such a great message, and one of those awe-inspiring scenes that teaches you the power of sharing and love around the people who love you will enable you to face any kind of obstacle. Shazam is a great example of taking a central idea of exploring what family means to a bunch of different characters and having them all have an equal say in it that builds to an incredible emotional climax, allowing for so much depth and care into the dialogue scenes as much as there are in the superhero action scenes. As a writer, this movie taught me how to use your antagonist not only as an obstacle, but by setting them up with a similar belief or upbringing to the protagonist, you can have some really great parallels and moments that mirror each other, thus creating a satisfying emotional arc for both. It also taught me that supporting characters can be much more than just pieces of a puzzle, but exploring how they feel about the relative ideas and theme of the story can create a bunch of varying perspectives that all come together in the end. Like Darla being so loving and welcoming to Billy because she's likely grown up in the foster care system her whole life. Or Mary terrified at the thought of leaving her family. Or Billy's foster mother showing more love and compassion for him after knowing him for a few days than his own mother did his whole life. So, why did this movie get to me specifically? What makes it so on point for me as a viewer? There's a lot of great scenes in it, but this one in particular got to me the most. I can tell you that as a foster child, I have imagined this scenario so many times in my head, and especially when I was Billy Batson's age. At the beginning, we see a scene in which Billy's birth mother will do anything for him and gives him a toy that will always help him find his way home, thus informing Billy's goal of trying to find her when she abandons him. But once Billy does meet his real mother, whilst part of me was hoping for a happy reunion, the movie showed that that isn't always the case. We see the same scene again, but with a much more dour context, with Billy's mother acting not too dissimilar from Savannah's family. This scene constantly shoves all of Billy's prior beliefs in his face and confirms all of his worst fears, and whilst that was enough to set Dr. Savannah down a villainous path, Billy's true heart and soul as a character is recognizing the importance of his real family, and it's what truly makes him become the hero. This had me in tears, and I still get choked up thinking about it. It's such a great scene. I've constantly yelled at my parents about wanting to meet my real mom, and one summer when I was 16, I had the chance to, and I decided not to take it, because I realized that I didn't want to know. And that family definitely means more than who is related to you by blood. It's about who truly loves you despite your flaws, and who will always stand with you even when you're totally in the wrong. This movie captured that feeling of isolation of being a foster child so well, plus the warmth of having a family in places that you wouldn't officially start by calling home. I can honestly see myself watching this movie again and again. It's a fun, refreshing, simple superhero tale that showed me, as a foster kid, that if I wanted to, I could be a hero, and that family's way more than skin deep. Sure, at times it may be a little silly or conform to superhero cliches, but here's the thing about those. When you execute them with confidence, style, and real heart, it doesn't matter if they remind you of something else, because a common goal with families is that they should all feel the same kind of love about each other. So that's why I loved Shazam, and I can't wait to see a second one. I want to personally thank Asher Angel, Zachary Levi, David F. Sandberg, and the whole cast and crew for giving me such a thoughtful answer to my question last year, and for delivering a movie that made this foster kid feel a little less alone. With a couple more watches, who knows? This could become my favorite superhero movie of all time. Thanks, guys.